and welcome to This Week in Travel. I'm Michelle Robson, editor of Turning Left for Less. In this episode, I'll be looking at the latest news, including a decent sale from British Airways for once in their premium sale, some Qatar offers to the Far East and Middle East, as well as some new routes from Qatar, and a brief look at the Swiss new seats for business and first class. I'll also be taking an in-depth look at Oman, how to get there with your miles, also what you can do with your points to stay there, and looking at two specific hotels, the new Jumeirah Muscat Bay and also the Shangri-La. Firstly, let's take a look at the travel news. There's some good news this week with some decent fares for once with both British Airways and Qatar. British Airways have launched their premium sale, which has some good deals to the US, mainly in January and February next year. For example, British Airways is costing around about £1,330 return in business class per person, which is back to kind of pre-COVID levels. There is a limited availability in that it's mainly the early part of next year that you can actually find these fares. But if you're not too bothered about when you go, then it's worth having a look at the US from January 24 onwards. It's also worth pointing out, although naturally the weather's pretty cold on the east coast of the US at that point, they normally have a special event in New York around this time, which is the New York Hotels Week. There's also restaurants and theatre tickets are all tend to be reduced for a certain period around mid-January to mid-February. So it's worth looking up the dates for 2024 or the usual dates if they haven't announced it yet. If you're interested in kind of getting a bargain in New York, because it's one of the cheapest times to go, but wrap up warm because it will be pretty cold. Qatar's offer is only for members of their Privilege Club, which is their loyalty club. It is free to join, so there's nothing to stop you from booking. You get 20% off. You do need a special code, so I'll link it all below so that you can find that. It's to a range of destinations. Most of the major tourist destinations are on there, so it's worth having a look. It's only for flights until the 30th of November this year. So the offer I'm going to talk about in a moment won't actually apply to that. Currently, there is some decent deals to the Middle East if you're interested in either Dubai or Abu Dhabi. These are mainly from Scandinavia, Oslo in particular. These are around £1,250, which is pretty decent. I did that journey recently in November, and if you want to find out more, go to turningleftforless.com and you can see my reviews of the flights with Qatar Airways. It's worth pointing out you have to change in Doha, but actually this is a pretty pleasant experience because they have obviously lounges. If you book the business light fare, but you have status, you can still use their lounges, and the new lounges for status holders are pretty nice. And that status in any one world doesn't need to be Qatar. The other fare that I'll talk about is slightly more complex. It's just popped up now. Again, it's for January and February next year. It's from Oslo to Bangkok, but you return to Amsterdam. It does work for a few other places in Europe to return to, but none of them are quite as good as that fare. That's around £1,340 return, which is an excellent fare to the Far East. I've not seen anything so cheap for quite a long time, so definitely worth looking at. Sadly, as I said, the discount doesn't work because it's outside the remit of the offer. It's also worth pointing out that this open door offer, as we call it, also has some stipulations. You need to stay for 5 nights. You are allowed to stop over for free one way in Doha. If you wanted to see Qatar, you could do that. But don't forget, you actually need insurance now to enter Qatar. Again, you can search for that on turningleftforless.com. We've got all the details on there. British Airways has also announced that they will be doing a trial for pre-ordering. Now, this is something that I've kind of missed since COVID. I used to prefer pre-ordering my main course because that way you know you're always going to get what you want and it stops wastage as well. Apparently, they're going to trial all meals being able to be chosen in all classes. Now, this sounds quite a big undertaking to me because the thought of in economy half the passengers having a special meal in effect sounds pretty challenging for the cabin crew, which is probably why they're actually trialling it. It's being trialled on 4 US routes over the next few months, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Personally, I'd just be glad if they brought back the pre-ordering for business and first class as a start, because I really think it's poor that it hasn't come back after so long after COVID, because it's a win-win for me. It means that you get to choose your meal and there's less wastage. So I really don't understand why they haven't brought that back. Swiss also announced their new seats this week, and they're exactly the same as the Lufthansa ones. So they're not going to be around until 2025. However, they are going to be a huge improvement for what they've got now. They'll all have aisle access in business class, and there will be some interesting configurations. A bit like Lufthansa, there's a choice of different seats. They didn't go into as much detail as Lufthansa, but basically some are suites and have a door. Some can be adjoined as two cabins joined together, a bit like the Q suites can with the double cabins, and some are more of a standard business class seat, but they're definitely a big step up from what we've got now. In first class, it's similar to the Lufthansa one. It looks exactly the same other than the colours are different. For both cabins, it's very typical Swiss with kind of light wood, black, and then they're using burgundy as the main seat colour. It looks very smart from the photos, and you can check this out on the website if you want to have a look at some pictures of it. One of the things I particularly like in both cabins is that it's going to be individual heat controls. I don't know about you, but I always feel either too hot or too cold on most aircraft. So it'd be great. You'll be able to individually temperature control your area. How much of a degree of temperature control you're going to have, we don't know yet, but it sounds like a great idea to me. So I look forward to seeing that. And hopefully they keep some of their bargain companion fares that we see now and again. And finally, going back to Qatar, they announced at the ITB conference in Berlin that they're bringing back some routes from pre-COVID and also some new routes. The main one that will probably be of interest to people will be that they are bringing back Birmingham, which will be great news if you want to fly from the UK, and that's coming this year. They will also be relaunching their service to Ras Al Khaimah. If you've been watching this regularly, you'll know that I visited there recently and absolutely loved it. It's part of the UAE and it's much quieter than Dubai. It's not really developed at all apart from some great hotels, and it's great if you enjoy getting out into nature. There's mountains, there's hiking, there's great beaches, there's some adrenaline junkie stuff if you like to do zip lines or sledders. It has a lot to offer, so it's great that you'll actually be able to fly there via Doha with Qatar rather than having to fly to Dubai and then get a cab from there or drive, which is about 50 minutes. So it'd be nice to actually fly direct there. I imagine it's quite a quiet airport as well. So let's talk about our main subject this week, Oman. It's somewhere I've always wanted to visit. It always just looks so dramatic in the scenery. And I finally got to go with a press trip with Jumeirah Hotels last week. It definitely lived up to its reputation for me. It's a stunning place, definitely well worth a visit. I'll talk about the hotels that I stayed at in this segment and also what to do whilst you're there and a few tips. But first, let's just have a quick chat about how you get there if you want to use your miles. If you're wanting to use Avios, I'm afraid it's pretty slim pickings, as British Airways have stopped flying to Muscat, unfortunately. The only people that fly direct are Oman Air, and they are not actually part of oneworld yet, although they are due to be by 2024. So if you're planning a trip for next year, then you should be able to use your Avios. However, we don't know exactly when they're going to join in 2024. The alternatives at the moment would be Royal Jordanian, which their seats are okay, but personally I would choose Qatar. So you have to fly via Doha, but it's a fairly quick connection and it's a decent airport to transit through. So Qatar is probably the best bet for Avios. If you're not too bothered about using Avios, but perhaps would like to use your Emirates miles, you could fly via Dubai and then you could fly on with Fly Dubai, as I did when I came back. And I thought they were a pretty good airline, Fly Dubai. They're actually part of Emirates in terms of the loyalty scheme. So you can use your Emirates miles or Sky Rewards on Fly Dubai. And finally, another option would be Etihad, if you're a member of their loyalty scheme or want to use some miles on Etihad. They fly onwards to Oman, which is how I actually got there. If you wanted to fly business class, I was pretty impressed with the very short service that we had to Muscat. It was only around about 45 minutes flying time, but we got a really nice wide seat, a bit like the sort of American recliner seats. We also were welcomed with a lemon mint drink and Arabic coffee and dates. And then we had a nice little tray of kind of snack items, but more than enough for that time of day, and we're also offered a choice of drinks. So I thought it was a great service for a short flight, and I also enjoyed the lounge there. So yeah, Etihad is another option. In terms of hotels, it's kind of slim pickings for some of the groups, in particular Hilton, because a lot of the hotels are not necessarily on the beach, they're in the city, which may not be what you want to do. So if we look at the main groups individually, for IHG, there's an Intercontinental. It's fairly new, but it is in the city. If you want to be on the beach, there's a decent Crowne Plaza that's on the beach, so that would probably be my preferred option. For Hilton, as I said, slim pickings. There's a standard Hilton and also a Hilton Garden Inn as well. The Hilton Garden Inn actually looks better in some respects. It's got a nice rooftop pool and it's relatively modern. Marriott's probably one of the better options because that has the very nice Al Bustan, which is a Ritz-Carlton property and probably one of the most luxurious hotels on the beach, as well as the Jumeirah that I talk about later in this video. So that would be a great use of your points because generally hotel prices are reasonably high in Oman along with everything else. You could also look at the JW Marriott if you don't care about staring at the beach because that is very new and it is sort of kind of away from the city, so it's got a nice backdrop of the mountains and a decent pool, so it would be quite good for a leisure break if you don't really care about being by the beach. Finally, there is a W by the beach as well. It's not in the main tourist area, but it's still reasonably close to Muscat if you want to get out and see things. Later in the programme, I'll be talking about the Shangri-La, which obviously you could use your golden circle points on, and also the Jumeirah, which has its own loyalty scheme, Jumeirah 1. So a little about Oman in general. I've really enjoyed my time here and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I'm not sure I would necessarily come back for two reasons. Firstly, it is expensive when you're here in the hotels. Alcohol is very pricey. Like for instance, a glass of Rosé d'Anjou, which is a fairly average rosé wine, was like £20 last night in the restaurant. So I didn't bother with that. Cocktails are a little bit cheaper, but they're still about £18 if you're lucky. So it's expensive. And generally the choice of wine is not particularly great unless you want to spend like £200 on a bottle for something at home that would be maybe 80 in a restaurant. So it's definitely pricey. It is a beautiful country. There's quite a lot to see and do. So I would definitely come if you haven't been. It's worth putting up with the prices just to see it all. The people here are very friendly. They're slightly reserved, I'd say, compared with other places I've been, but they're very polite, very honest, and they take a real pride in their country and they love showing you around and telling you about things, which I really appreciate. Once you kind of get beneath the surface a bit, then they've got a good sense of humour, but sometimes they're a bit reserved to start off with. I would say getting around, there's no Uber. Taxis only take cash. However, there are two apps that work exactly the same as Uber. One is called Maharaba, that's the government taxi app, and the other one is called O Taxi. I've only used Maharaba. I had difficulty getting my credit card to work. It wouldn't seem to accept any sort of card like Curve that seemed as a debit card or Revolut. Eventually I managed to get my American Express card to work. So I'd recommend just trying it with a credit card rather than something that could be seen as a debit card. It worked really well, just exactly the same as Uber. You can set a tip, etc. Around here I'm getting one within 5 minutes generally, so it's quite easy if you want to get out and about on your own. There's lots to see here. I've done a city tour where we went to the mosque and I'd 100% recommend this with a guide. You can do a self-guided audio tour, but having someone to talk to you about it face to face was so much better. It was really quite stunning. I've always wanted to visit a mosque and this was a great one to visit. The inside was just absolutely beautiful. The crystal chandeliers and the carpets. For example, the carpet is one of the biggest in the world. It took them years to make it. And then once they'd made it, they broke it apart to transport it and then spent a year stitching it all back together again. So it's just something that you'll probably not see elsewhere and definitely worth a visit. We also went to the souk, which typically you have to bargain. Silver is very popular here. Oman silver is well known. Doesn't generally have the silver mark on it, so bear that in mind. If you ever wanted to sell it, you won't be able to. Prices seemed quite punchy and you could barter, but they were very hard to barter with. So yeah, definitely it's not cheap, I'd say. Don't expect a massive bargain, but they do have some beautiful silverware and things like pashmina shawls and a lot of fake stuff if that's your thing. Other things you can go and see is there's a National Museum here, there's the Palace, and there's also the Opera House you can do a guided tour on.
Outside those sort of things, diving and snorkeling is really big here. The water is absolutely crystal clear. It's beautiful and actually warmer here than I found in Ras Al Khaimah, where I was recently. It's lovely to swim in when it's calm. The first couple of days it was a little bit rough, but since then it's been absolutely like a mill pond, beautifully quiet. And the beach here is great. It just slopes very gently down. It's got beautiful soft sand. I'd say better than Jumeirah. Jumeirah had a bit of coral in the sand, whereas here it's lovely soft sand. So you can go snorkeling on a boat trip, or you can actually go out to some of the islands. If you're into diving, there's some shipwrecks here, and they're actually in the process of making an artificial reef by sinking a ship as well. So it's definitely a big hotspot for diving. In the hotels I stayed in, they had a wide variety of water sports, but not motorized. They're not keen to have things like jet skis here because you get turtles in the area. And here in the hotel in the Shangri-La, they're actually out at night searching for turtles because apparently they hatch on the beach very regularly. So they like to make sure they're okay. So if you're into wildlife, it's a great place to come. They have a number of dolphins here that you're likely to spot on a boat cruise, including spinner dolphins, my favourite kind. Now, if you haven't seen these, they're really quite spectacular. They're a bit smaller than the dolphins you're probably used to, but they actually do go in the water and they spin before they go back in again. It's really quite a sight to behold. So I'd recommend going on a boat cruise and seeing if you can spot some of those. At the previous hotel, we actually spotted a baby shark in the water. Apparently it was one that wasn't dangerous, which was good to know, but it was right up in the shallows. So that was a bit of a shock to us when we saw that swimming around. So finally, my thoughts on visiting Oman. I definitely would recommend it. Definitely bring your bank balance with you because it's not cheap. Hotels, I'd say average for the region in terms of pricing. They're not crazy priced, but it's worth kind of shopping around and looking at what deals you can get, particularly, as I mentioned, the deals from GTC where you get that money towards your costs in the hotel because it will add up with things like drinks. And I think something like Al Husn is great if you like a drink or two because you've got that hour of drinks before you go out, which just keeps the cost down a little bit rather than maybe going to the bar and spending, £10 on a bad glass of wine. And here it's all included. So definitely come and visit Oman. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, lots to see and do, and great for relaxation as well. Some beautiful hotels here to visit. You can find more information in the notes below, and I'll be writing full reviews of both hotels on turningleftforless.com in the next couple of weeks. Hello and welcome to the Jumeirah Muscat Bay in Oman. It's the newest hotel that's opened as a beach resort recently, and it's definitely very luxurious. It's situated around 40 minutes from Muscat Airport, and I have to say I've been pretty impressed with this stay, which is part of a Jumeirah press visit. You can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, the stunning bay that it's set on, which is surrounded by sandstone cliffs and beautiful turquoise clear water. There's a lovely sandy beach as well. It is not quite the same in terms of the beach as you'd expect in Dubai because a lot of the sand there is imported. This is a natural beach and they do have quite a few coral reefs here, so the sand is a little bit less fine than you would find in Dubai, but it is natural sand and it's a lovely golden colour. The water is crystal clear. There's amazing wildlife here. If you're into snorkeling or diving, there's some great sights. There's some sunken ships here. Apparently they're going to sink a new one to actually make an artificial reef. Plenty of coral reefs. You get whale sharks here towards the late summer season. Yesterday we actually saw a baby shark. I'm not quite sure what species of shark it was, but it was probably about this big, as they say, and yeah, just swimming around in the shallows here. There's also turtles nearby that you can get a boat trip to go and see the turtles. So yeah, if you're into your water activities, this is definitely the perfect place to come. They don't have jet skis or motorised water sports in this bay, but actually I quite like that because I think it would be quite intrusive and obviously not particularly great for the local marine life. A little bit more about the hotel itself. I'm staying in a deluxe sea view balcony, which I think this is definitely the category I would go for if you wanted a standard room rather than a suite. It's a spacious room. It's got a lovely deep soaking tub, a separate walk-in shower that's huge with a seat, and a nice big mirror with twin sinks, so there's no arguing about who gets the sink first in the morning. Bed is super comfortable. I love the pillows here. They're just so soft but supportive as well. And they actually have a full pillow menu if that doesn't suit you, which I really like that you've got the choice of that. The amenities are great here. You get a beach bag, you get flip-flops, you even get a little scented lavender sachet for your linen drawers, which I think is a lovely little touch. I particularly like the dressing table area because it's got a fold-out mirror that's got a nice sort of deep area for putting all your makeup and toiletries, and 2 sockets nearby if you want to dry your hair or do anything else there. It's very modern, so it's been really well designed. I really like the touch panels for the lights that have different mood settings from sleep to arrival, and as soon as you touch it, it lights up, so none of that trying to put your glasses on if you wear glasses to try and read it. It's very obvious straight away what you're looking at and very obvious what you've selected. It's got a nice little sofa area, which is nice if you want to not sit on the bed to watch TV, for example, or if you wanted room service. The balcony is a reasonable size. It's got a fantastic view of the beach and the pools. I'm just about overlooking the adult pool, which is one of 3 pools here. The adult pool has almost a Balinese vibe with these lovely day beds surrounding it. It's really tranquil. It's one of my favourite spots in the hotel. And the pool is a lovely temperature. I reckon probably 29 degrees. The other pool is the main family pool, and these have bubble beds, which are really nice for just relaxing in the sun. Again, it's a nice temperature. There's good service at the pool. You have a button to press to summon someone. There's even a do not disturb button, which I really like. And you get a little cooler bag with some water bottles in it. They'll make up the lounger for you, so it feels pretty luxurious. In terms of restaurants, you've got the main restaurant, which does the buffet breakfast and then kind of all day dining, depending on how many people are in the hotel. Sometimes it's a buffet, sometimes it's a la carte. And they also do a great Friday brunch, which has lots of live cooking stations, and you can do an inclusive drinks package with that as well. Last night I went to the Italian restaurant, which also has a rooftop bar, which has some really stunning views, and the food there is superb. I have to say, the food here has been absolutely faultless. It's very fresh, quite light, lots of choice, and just everything we've sampled we've absolutely loved. So that's the Italian restaurant. There's also an Asian bar that does kind of Asian tapas, so light snacks. Again, that's got great views. You can sit outside. It's high up in the hotel, so we also really enjoyed that. And then finally, you've got the beachside bar, which restaurant, where you can sit outside right by the beach and have really fresh food. They do sushi, they do salads, they do steak, a little bit of everything, slight Italian and Asian influences, probably from the other restaurants, I guess. But we really enjoyed that one, just sitting outside with a nice glass of rosé and some freshly grilled local prawns. Just amazing. Absolutely loved that. There's also a spa here, which I sampled, and it has the Bastian Gonzalez manicures and pedicures, which, if you don't know, he's kind of the most well-known manicurist and pedicurist. It's all based on bone structure, so it's a bit more almost medical, the pedicures, but apparently people rave about it. I had a foot massage with the podiatrist yesterday, which was great, using his products. But they also have some facilities there, like a steam room, experienced showers, sauna, a heated flat bed that you can lie on. So it's worth a visit. Even if you don't want a treatment, you can go and use the facilities there. So worth popping in. The hotel can organise lots of different activities, but I'll talk about those at a later date. But just to say that the boat, if you wanted a boat trip, will actually come into the bay here, because they have their own floating jetty, which is great rather than having to transfer somewhere else. So if you want a boat trip, it's a good place to stay, or perhaps diving. They have a diving centre here that can take you out on the boat. So I guess the summary is it's very luxurious, as you'd expect from Jumeirah. It's brand new. It's been really well designed. It's got a lovely calm feeling, beautiful views of the bay. I mean, it's just one of the most stunning places I've visited. And I would definitely come back here and stay again if I wanted to visit Oman. It's just a really beautiful resort and very well done. So I'm now going to talk about the other luxury hotel in the area, the Shangri-La. There is also a Ritz-Carlton Al Bustan, which is a little bit closer to the airport and the city of Muscat. But for now, I'm concentrating on the 2 hotels I've actually stayed in. So the Shangri-La is actually close to where I was talking about before, the Jumeirah. It's about 5 to 10 minutes in a taxi from there. And for those listening on podcast, I'm actually sitting here on the balcony of my room at the Al Husn at Shangri-La, which is their adults only area. And behind me, you can actually see the beach of the other hotel. So there's 3 hotels here. It's a very large resort. In fact, it's the largest resort in the whole of Oman. So the main resort has a huge beach there, real sweeping bay with beautiful mountains in the background and lovely lawn areas. It's really very picturesque. The Al Husn has its own private beach, which is equally beautiful, and they will run you around the resort on a little buggy if you want to, but you can walk as well. It's not the best place for those with mobility issues, because there are some places where the only option is steps, so I'd bear that in mind. There's not huge amounts of steps, but like down to the pool there's maybe 10 steps, so worth bearing in mind if you have a few mobility issues. They, as I said, they will run you anywhere in the resort in a buggy from Al Husn, so that's worth bearing in mind. I'd say in terms of comparing with Jumeirah, just in the setting, I'd say Jumeirah is a bit more intimate. This is obviously a very large resort, but it's equally dramatic, I think, particularly round by the Al Husn beach. There's some beautiful limestone arches in the water. You can see boats coming through, and they've got both sides there. There's 2 different areas you can sit with different views, which is really lovely, both overlooking the water and the mountains. So it's very picturesque as well. The advantages you get here are the fact that Al Husn is adults only, and it's a bit like a Shangri-La club. So you get your breakfast included, you get afternoon tea, and you get evening drinks and a few canapes. They're served to you individually, so not one where you could kind of use it as a replacement for dinner. However, the setting of the evening drinks is really quite spectacular. It's one of the best club settings I've ever been in. It's basically this beautiful Oman-style courtyard outdoors with beautiful fountains, so the sound of the running water. They play very relaxing music. It's just stunning with the palm trees and the lights. Almost had a soporific effect. After sitting there for an hour, I wanted to go to bed rather than go for dinner. It was so relaxing. You only get an hour, but they are very generous. I managed 4 drinks in the hour, and I probably could have gone for a 5th when they came round for the kind of last orders. Drinks in Oman are hugely expensive. There's 100% tax on alcohol here. So you're not going to get anything great at the drinks. It was something like Dark Horse Rosé, which is pretty dire, but I managed to choke down a glass before I switched to the gin and tonic. Now that actually was pretty good. That tasted absolutely fine to me. I don't know what it was because there's no list. You just have to ask and they tell you. But they have, you know, basic spirits, beer and 3 different types of wine and a sparkling wine, which I'm guessing is probably Prosecco. So it's definitely worth going. The service was great. They were really efficient. The lovely guy serving me, Jerome, was so sweet and friendly, and he kept me well topped up the whole time. So I really enjoyed that, and it's worth coming almost just for that because it was such a special experience. I also went for afternoon tea that's served in the restaurant that they have in Al Husn, just the general sort of all-day restaurant. It was quite a formal affair, had a little box of a few savoury little canapé type things, and then some cakes and a couple of small scones. Again, probably not enough for a lunch replacement, but if you've had a big breakfast, it would probably do you. And talking of the breakfast, this was quite spectacular. It had a huge buffet, which was only cold items, but it had literally everything from Arabic things to beautiful fresh fruit, pastries, charcuterie, a great cheese display. And I had some wonderful truffled ricotta cheese with my breakfast, which was really great. They also have a big menu of all different egg dishes, from the eggs royale to omelettes and things like pancakes, waffles, and then they have specials every day, which is great. Plus they have things like meze, so you can try some of the local specialities. So yeah, that was one of the best breakfasts I've had, I think, since I've been traveling. What else can I tell you about the resort? The whole resort is really spectacular in Al Husn. Just as you walk in, the Arabic design of it is really quite stunning and feels very special. And it's very relaxing as you walk in, just has that air of calm and coolness as you walk in. The staff have been exceptional, really friendly. They've remembered my name. I'll hasten to add they don't know who I am as far as I know. I booked completely on my own just through GTC, our partners that give you special perks, but I'll talk a bit about that at the end. And yeah, they've remembered my name a lot of the time. To be fair, it's probably easy to spot me because I'm the only person on my own here, so quite easy to remember who I am. But yeah, they've been really great. I've been using their WhatsApp feature, which is really handy. They reply within a couple of minutes normally to find out information, and they also send you regular updates on what's going on in the resort. So that's a really handy feature, and they asked before they used it, which I thought was good, because some resorts don't, they just start bombarding you, which I think is a little bit off. So that's been really useful. The room is the one letdown, I'd say. It's perfectly comfortable, well equipped, but it looks very dated now. It's a bit of a shame. It probably doesn't need a lot to bring it up to date. Maybe a new carpet, a couple of bits of furniture, but it's Arabic style, but it feels quite dated, and some bits of furniture don't quite match. However, it's got a nice sort of walk-in wardrobe area. It's got a huge bath. It's got a walk-in shower, which is also very big. The bed's very comfortable, and it's got a proper coffee machine. Everything you'd expect in a 5-star hotel. It's also worth mentioning the minibar is free. The only alcohol in there is beer, but anything's better than nothing. So you get all your little snacks. There's chocolate in there, there's Pringles, and then there's quite a wide selection of different soft drinks as well. So that's all included in the price. So I think given the prices in Oman, I think that's pretty good value personally. I visited a restaurant outside Al Husn last night, which was the seafood restaurant. I thought it was okay. I'm not sure I would rush back. It's worth going once, I think, because of the setting. It's right on the beach and you hear the waves. It's all open air. The fish was great. I've found Oman fish is really, really something special. So fresh and great choice of seafood and fish. I had like a ceviche that was really good, but it wasn't properly cured. Normally it would come slightly cured because I'll put the dressing on a few minutes in advance just to let it start cooking slightly. So it wasn't at all, it was completely raw. So I had to let it kind of sit and cook a little bit for a couple of minutes in the acid of the ceviche mix. And then I had some prawns which were described as Singapore chili style, but they weren't really, it was more like sweet chili. But it was perfectly tasty. Service was a bit slow here and there, but they were very friendly and they kept coming to check how I was doing. Prices in the resort are like the rest of Oman in hotels, really, really high. So using someone like GTC that I mentioned, you get a special rate through them, which includes some extras like early check-in, late check-out, and $100 of credit. So that kind of paid for my meal last night. I had 2 courses and 1 alcoholic drink and a small bottle of water, but they actually took the alcoholic drink off because I waited a long time to get my table that I booked. So it came to almost exactly $100 without the drink. So that kind of gives you an idea of the pricing of things here. In terms of other restaurants, that's one good thing about this resort is you won't need to go out to eat particularly unless you're here for a long time. So one of the ones I was really keen to try but unfortunately was shut yesterday is they have a Michelin-starred chef that has an Indian restaurant, and that's actually in Al Husn, and that looked fantastic. I really would have liked to try that. There's also an Italian in the other hotel, and various other restaurants dotted around the hotel. So you're definitely not going to be short of a bar or a place to eat whilst you're here. But if you did want to go out, the Jumeirah is only 5 to 10 minutes away. It's about £10 in a taxi. Finally, a few things about the facilities here. So there's a spa in the actual Al Husn, but it's quite small. Similarly, the gym here is absolutely tiny. However, you can use the facilities in the other hotels. There's 3 in total, including Al Husn. So if you want a bigger gym or you want the full service Chi Spa, which is Shangri-La's signature spa, then you can just go over to one of the other hotels. The family-friendly hotel has a lot for children. There's play areas, there's a water park. It's quite basic, but there's also a really great lazy river that goes pretty much the whole length of the resort. I didn't get a chance to try it, but it looked great. They have things like camel rides on the beach, huge selection of water sports, and plenty of activities like boat tours that they can organise for you. So you're definitely not going to be short of a thing to do whilst you're staying here. In terms of comparison with Jumeirah, it's completely different feel. Here is a big resort. It doesn't have that intimacy feel. Even in the Al Husn, it feels quite big. Apparently, it's actually the biggest hotel here, which is interesting because you would think adults only would actually be smaller, but it is the biggest of the 3. And it does feel quite big. I mean, it's like a 10-minute walk to my room from reception. So that's worth bearing in mind. If you get a sea view like this, you will have a long walk from reception because this is how you get the best views because of the way the hotel's set out.
Well, that's all for this episode. Join me next week when I'll be looking at the latest news and also taking a look at my Air France flights in business class and how I paid for them using Virgin Miles. Until then, happy travels.